Guns. Guns are a subject of interest to me. I actually enjoy firearms, but I know that there are a lot of people that don't, and that's up to them. But what I do realize is, as somebody who is I guess I tend to be socially left leaning. Like I don't really care, about people getting married to trees or um, sexuality. Who you want to have sex with or who you want to have relations with, or abortion. It's up to you. You want to do it, do it. And with guns, I'm also of the same type of volition that it's up to you. I also think knowing human nature, being driven by science and evolution, that you have to protect yourself. That somebody who's defenseless, who disarms themselves, will get uh, the invaded or taken over. Someone will get your resources. You have to have a viable defense, and I don't want to live in a society, anyways, where I have to call 911 in order to have everything fixed. I would rather be able to do things myself. I'd rather be able to protect myself. I don't want to have to live in a police state where you have to have 1,000 million cops to do everything, and that can always get itself out of control. That's another thing, living in a police state where you know, because you'll oftentimes hear people say, "Oh, we should just dial 911 or call the police if they." No, no, there's certain things that you should just take care of yourself. Uh, some bricks in your house, you should be able to take care of that yourself. First off, depending off of the police to arrive within a short amount of time and actually save your ass is probably not going to happen. They're just going to pick up the pieces. Once you either shoot someone, they shoot you, you rape them, they rape you, who knows? But that's what's going to have to happen first. The police just come and probably arrest you for it or don't arrest you for it. Uh, they pick up the pieces. They first responders in the sense that they respond to whatever happened, but they're usually not able to actually stop things in the process. Bank robberies, things like that. Do they get there when the bank's robbed? No, they get there after, and then they take things, and then they try to go figure out, who did it, and investigate and track the people down. So, anyways, you should be able to protect yourself. You should be able to do things yourself. Um, and so I believe in a vigorous defense. If someone knows that you are armed, they're less likely to accost you. It's just the way it is. So have a gun and protect yourself. And also too, you're less drain on the public. And the less police and fire and things else we have to have, the cheaper it is for governments. So let's cut down on them. Let's deal with our own issues. And I'll talk uh, at a later date on issues with having too many police and Stanford prison experiments and things like that, where you overarm police, militarize the police, and guess what happens? They abuse the public that they work for. They forget about that. So you have to be able to protect yourself in our society. I think we pride ourselves on it in this country. I think you uh, have to be proud for it. So, and uh, I think the state that I'm in, Massachusetts, is crazy. I think the amount of regulations on people getting guns is is ridiculous. The fact that you have to actually get guns from or get your license from the police is dumb. You should be able to go to the town clerk and get your license. You may want to have a police background check done. That's all and well, but it should be a neutral party, because I've had issues renewing my gun license. Yeah, it was specifically the first time I ever had my gun license renewed, and uh, I have a uh, one arrest on my record. When I was 19 years old, I was arrested for minor in transport. So that was in 1990, I think, or 89. I think 1990. So yeah, it must be 1990. Yeah, 1990. Ironically, not far from where I live now. Um, so I do have to mention that I was never convicted. It was one of those things that they did, continuance without a finding, and you go and you just don't get in trouble and do okay, and then they quote unquote strike it from the record. They never really do. I think it ends up being an arrest. You'll always have there, no matter what. You can even get it expunged, and it is still in there somewhere if somebody looks hard enough. So they'll always ask you when your license around here, and they'll say, "Hey, are you have you ever been arrested?" They actually ask specifically, "Have you been arrested?" Not convicted, but arrested. So you do have to, even if there was no charges led, it's just a matter of being arrested. And you say yes, and especially since I get my license in this town, they're they see it right on their computer. So every time I renew it, they'll ask these, and I have to state, yes, I was arrested for a non-physical crime. It wasn't like restraining order. These types of things in Massachusetts will probably, not always, but will probably keep you from getting a gun. Is having a restraining order or having any assault and battery, especially an assault and battery on police. That's definitely not going to fly well on getting your license to carry. So and this one particular police officer who I was renewing my license with asked me, and I was there with my wife, luckily, and asked me if I had ever been arrested. I said, "Oh yes, I was arrested actually by a police officer back in the day when I was a minor, and it was dealt with in the um, continues without a finding type thing, and that was the only speck on my record." Um, and it's never been an issue. So I went to pick up my license from them, just the renewing it. Weeks later, I was told, called, and they said, "Oh, your license is here." And now they just mail it to me. But back then, you had to actually go to the police station to pick it up. I went to go pick it up, and that same police officer was there, and he said, "Oh, we come here for a moment. I want to talk to you." And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." And I went over, and he said, "You didn't tell me you had been arrested when you were 19 for minor transport." And I said, "Oh yeah, yeah. No, I did. You had it on your computer, right in front of you, and my wife was there. We talked about that." And his response is, he said, "Are you calling me a liar?" And then there was just an awkward silence. And I said, "No, I'm not. I'm saying that maybe there was a miscommunication, but we definitely talked about it, and we had discussed that briefly. So that was mentioned. I did not try to keep that from you, nor would I try to keep that from you, because I know you have it in your system, and it's not something that I ever thought would be a big deal. Anyways, in the middle of that, he hands me my license and turns and walks away while I was talking. Um, Pretty abrasive, pretty. I think that was some sort of a psychological test, perhaps, that he had done on me to see if my reaction, maybe was. I don't know, to tell you the truth. I don't know. In retrospect, I don't know why he did that. I was a little ticked off when he walked away, though. That was like, as you're in the middle of a conversation, try doing that to a policeman. If you're in the middle of something, and or he's in the middle of talking to you, and you just turn around and walk away, that's not going to go over so well. So when they do it to you, it's a little bit like, nonetheless, I don't think I've seen him around anymore, and I'm probably guessing he got canned because he probably pissed off the wrong person. So I do not think that that should be dealt with through the police. I think it should be dealt with through the town clerk, like it used to be done uh, when I had a license prior to 1998. So yeah, you need background checks, and you need to have some, but it is a right. A Second Amendment right is a right. I don't think there should be also bans on guns. You should not be told you cannot have certain types of weapons like an AR-15, because an AR-15 is like any other rifle. It is there is no special of the way it shoots its bullets. It's a rifle, has a magazine. It's semi-automatic. Um, they're a fantastic gun. They're very modular, meaning you can take them apart. They're like a Jeep. You can buy parts for them. You can fix them easily. They are standardized. I've always thought the AR-15 platform or the M16 platform, whatever you want to call it, is a great uh, platform. And by the way, AR stands for Armalite Rifle, not for assault rifle, as everybody would think it stands for. Armalite was the original company that invented the rifle, the AR-15, Armalite Rifle 15. Anyways, I think um, you know, making it a class system where you have people that can have certain types of weapons and others. Like, I mean, specifically, like when in our state, police can buy pretty much anything they want, and you're relegated to only a certain amount of weapons. There's two lists in Massachusetts, one maintained by the Attorney General and one maintained by, I forget. But either way, there's two lists, and you have to go through them both and make sure that your gun that you're going to purchase is on both lists. There are some that are only on one list, and that means it is not legal, and you cannot own it. It's bizarre. It should be clear this type of issues should be covered by the vagueness doctrine in the Constitution, meaning that it should be unconstitutional to try to enforce a law that people cannot understand. It has to be clear and understandable. The vagueness doctrine should wipe out that, but it never does because every time somebody tries to challenge any laws in Massachusetts, the judges somehow make sure that there is no judicial review done. The last case that I remember getting to the Supreme Court, Catano versus Massachusetts, was a situation where you had a stun gun that a woman had used at one point in time. Stun guns or electric, stun guns um, were banned for civilians in Massachusetts altogether. You could not possess them. Stun guns were illegal for civilians and only legal for law enforcement. Like I said, creating a class system. Well, Catano had one from another state. This woman, let's just say her name Sarah Catano. Sarah had one, and she had an abusive ex-husband, and he came to attack her one day, and she had a stun gun, and she used it to thwart him. She called 911, said he's going to attack me, but so the police show up. Luckily, he had left, and she said, "Thank goodness I had this stun gun." And he left, but he was going to kill me, and he didn't. And so the police promptly arrested her for protecting herself with a stun gun and brought her to court. And she appealed it after being found guilty and appealed it and appealed it, appealed it. It got up to the U.S. Supreme Court, Katana versus Massachusetts, at which point the Massachusetts tried to say it could regulate guns, but when it was said that guns could not be regulated, said that was not a gun. Their defense was really bad. And the judges said, okay, we're going to rest until tomorrow and then we'll give you a decision. Well, that was probably the worst thing um, the Supreme Court could do because that night they did what do they call it, bench trial, a bench trial, where without even the defendant being there, they declared her not guilty and expunged her record, thereby making the case moot the next day at the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court went to rule on it, at which point the state of Massachusetts said, "Oh no, sorry, we dealt with this last night. It is now moot," which was a really sleazy way of getting around judicial review. Typical Massachusetts behavior, and they did then realize that they had to open up possession to the public. So things changed eventually, and you can own a stun gun now, but it is regulated. And the thought was, which is bizarre to me, that this was back in 2012, I believe, when they were making them illegal at the time. The thought was, and was brought up by some spokesman from the state police, that said that they were afraid that these stun guns would be used on state police officers, which I think is absurd. If you're going to kill or somehow get rid of a state policeman, um, it's highly unlikely you're going to try to do that with a stun gun, especially with body armor that they wear. Uh, that's going to open you up to immediate lethal force. If you're going to do that, if you're going to try to incapacitate state police or local police for that matter, or any type of law enforcement, you're probably not going to use a stun gun and try to get really close and shock them with it. You're most likely, it's just asking for trouble. It's asking for death is what it's asking for. So most likely you're just better off using a different type of weapon or not doing it in general. So that's my take on that. So I believe that having regulations where you cannot possess certain types of weapons, and yet police can. If you want to just outright ban people from having this type of like a tank, totally understandable, totally understandable. But as with the militarization of police now, since the late '80s, we have created a system where um, police, ex-police, oftentimes can obtain weaponry that civilian Joe cannot uh, cannot possess, and it's just not a good idea creating a class system like that. So that is my take on guns. I think there's got to be some I think everybody agrees with like some sort of background checks, but I do not believe that that you should be banned. In an ideal world, yeah, it would be nice not to have guns, but it's just not the way it is. It's not utopia, happiness stuff. That just isn't a thing. It's not real. You need to defend yourself. Every country in the world has a military, and the reason they have a military is to defend themselves. If they don't, they will get taken over by their neighbors. It's just the way it is. It's human nature. So, anyways, thanks for listening to my take on guns, and that is the secular libertarian's view. Pro gun, pro gun, and fairness. That's the way it is. That's the way it should be. Uh, Again, you can have some limits, but the dreaded AR-15. We could go over this. I love this dreaded AR-15. I think it's a great gun. I really do. I think it's the Jeep of guns. It's modular and great. You can take it apart. You can add things to it. You can minus things to it. How many people each year are killed by AR-15s? It is minute. It is a minute amount, and that's what we're always talking about. Oh, ban assault rifles. Oh, assault rifle. You'll cut down on homicides. No, you won't. Nobody uses assault rifles to commit homicides, other than your once in a blue moon every 3 or 4 year. Well, I shouldn't say that. Every so often, let's just say, a school shooting. Um, and it doesn't make that big of a difference because you look at certain school shootings where they didn't use an AR-15. West Virginia, right? Is that West Virginia school shooter where he went in, he killed over 30 people with two 9mm pistols. Uh, if you are shot by a weapon, most likely you would probably rather be shot by an AR-15. The reason being the 223 or the 5.56mm NATO round is going to go through you like a pin. It goes so fast, it just sting it in and out. Usually does not cause major. I've seen a policeman actually get shot 9 times. I think it was 9 times, and it goes through his bulletproof vest and everything. And he survived. It's just because it went through like so fast in and out of him. Now, if you shot him, like I carry a 10mm weapon. If you shoot someone with a 10mm with a full powder rounds, that it's absolutely devastating. It's not a round you're going to probably survive. If it hits you anywhere in, you know, that area, if it hits you in an arm or a leg, yeah, it's just gonna take those off. But it's not probably, well, you might bleed out. That's the problem there. But it's going to be devastating nonetheless. It's a stopper of a round, but yet it doesn't really boot you to the ground. The 10 millimeter is a beautiful, beautiful round, I think. Anyways, but this is the last thing you want to get shot with. The 223, 5.56. I would way rather get shot with headshot. Let's just do this headshot. The worst place, right? You're ever going to want to get shot. You shot with a 223. It's probably going to go in and out. Um, yeah, it's going to do damage. Probably going to kill you. But if it doesn't, it's going to be limited damage. Sometimes it literally can go in and out like a pen right through you, like an arrow would go. A 10 millimeter round is going to do a horrific damage to your head, your brain, and everything. It's just bad all around. So don't want to get shot with that. Pistols, yeah. And now let's go back to, I said AR-15s. How many people die each year from an AR-15? Very, very under 100. Last I looked was under 100 were killed last year out of what, 30 something thousand people died. Most of which, by the way, are suicides. But and nobody really kind of does suicides with rifles. They tend to use pistols. But your number one killer, number one uh, killer of people is your 9 millimeter pistol. That is your number one killer, and that's what's gonna kill you most likely in a drive-by, in gang type things, and I would say mafia, but mafia type things used to be, for some reason, they always shotguns. I guess that was the big thing in the 60s and 70s, and that's why you had cut off shotguns that were outlawed everywhere. I don't think that's as much as of a thing anymore. But yeah, your 9 millimeter is the one that is the prevailing kill. It used to be 22s, actually. Interestingly enough, that was what killed the most people. I believe 9 millimeter. I keep saying millimeter has overtaken the 22. And your 223, your 5.56 NATO AR-15 type round is far behind. Not even close. It's not even like in the top 10. It's like way back there. Um, you have shotguns, I think, are up there somewhere, and you get your various caliber pistols. Pistols are what predominantly kills people, and the predominant killer is themselves, is suicide. Um, and that's a whole nother thing we'll go over is the right to die, the right to take your own life. I think is your own right. As somebody who's a libertarian, I think you have a right to do that. Not that I want to see people blow their brains out. So that's my thoughts on guns. I think there's a lot of, media cuckoo-ness about the scary AR-15 rifle. It's so powerful it'll just like blow your arms and it just explode you. You get shot with the bullets, but that's just not true. The 223, the 22 caliber round, which is a 223 or 5.56 NATO, is not what you would probably you could ask most special forces guys, and they're going to say, I do not like the 223 or the 5.56 millimeter NATO round, and most of them I think now are being offered 6.8 millimeter chambered AR-15s or M4s, that type of rifle. Some of them even do other calibers. There's 300 Blackout. There's a bunch of different ones, up to uh, what was the one? 450 Bushmaster. It was a big, 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 big heavy round. I think the magazines for the AR-15 that are chambered for 450 Bushmaster are only hold 7 rounds maximum. But it's a powerful round for an AR-15. But those guns, the ones that you find your school shooters using, are always, every single one of them I've seen have been chambered in 223 or 5.56 millimeter NATO caliber. the main shooter did use a 30 caliber. It was a 7.62 millimeter by um, 51 NATO. So that was a 308. And they've standard that in NATO designated NATO designated. It goes by metric system. So you have 7.62 millimeter by 51 millimeter, and that's the size of the cartridge. That's a 30.308 caliber in American language. So that's a thought of guns and libertarianism, and that's how I tend to think it should be classified. I think that you should have guns and should have the right to have them, and it really should be very little restriction other than background tests. Yeah, you don't want crazy people getting guns. I'll agree. You definitely don't want somebody who's been, adjudicated into a mental hospital or anything like that. So you do have to have some basic checks. Um, but it is a right. We're driving. Driving actually is not a right. It's a privilege. Having a gun is a right. So you have more of a right to a gun than you do to driving your car. Something to be said about that. And unless you can change the Constitution, but that by amendment, but that's going to be quite a process. I don't think you're going to get many states, especially now in this divisive world, to agree to doing that. But you can do background checks. The Supreme Court has okayed background checks to a point. You gotta do it fairly, and you can, yeah, you just gotta do it right. And you can also, things can be safe when people do have weaponry. It doesn't mean that people are just gonna start pumping lead into surrounding buildings for no reason just because they're pissed off about things. I think sometimes my mother was very liberal, and she tended to believe things where if someone had a gun there and they were upset, they're just going to start shooting at holes into things or into surrounding buildings. And it just, I, I own some firearms, and I don't do that. Matter of fact, I never even think about them much. Kind of interesting, you know. But anyways, enough on that. Talked to almost 30 minutes. I just wanted to get that out there and get the thoughts on this political party I'm making up, this secular libertarianism party that is going to be pro-gun, but with the basic regulations, basic amount there. So I don't know. Provide me some feedback if you want. Peace.